I watched a debate between Richard Dawkins and John Lennox, the latter a professor of mathematics and a Christian apologist. I was especially interested in how Dawkins would respond to challenges by Christian academics. I strongly believed you need to hear both sides of any debate. When I have not done that and have made an ill-informed decision, I've suffered the cost. The cost is often in wasted time of having to do a more thorough job the second time around. That's what I wish I had done with my initial reading of The God Delusion. My reading of that book had been both the start and the end of a very short investigation. I had not asked, what would the opposition say? And I wish I had. For the first time in my life, I was hearing a persuasive argument for the Christian faith. I started to see warning signs in The God Delusion. One in particular grew in my mind. Why did Dawkins ruthlessly ridicule anyone who professes a faith? There is a constant pattern of ridicule in The God Delusion, both from his own pen and those he quotes. But scientific inquiry is based on calm, logical, analytical interpretation of the evidence. Preconceptions, biases, and emotions are all best left at the door. Dawkins seemed to bring a lot of emotion into this discussion. When it comes to The God Delusion, there are many examples of Dawkins using ridicule. Dawkins dedicates his book to Douglas Adams, author of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Quoting Adams, he writes, "Isn't it enough to see that a garden is beautiful without having to believe that there are fairies at the bottom of it too?" The underlying narrative is that religion should be discarded without too much consideration. It is of the same substance as myth and fairy tales. Nonsense. Ridicule is never helpful to learning. The best teachers are the ones who communicate a belief that no question is too silly. Dawkins himself criticizes a previous culture that ridicules atheists for their non-belief, not encouraging people to question things or think. Yet by his own ridicule, he is surely guilty of this same crime. Another way that Dawkins discourages further investigation, the notion that the burden of proof lies with the believer. Burden of proof is a necessary legal concept, an important one. It provides a safe default answer. However, the concept, it's not helpful when it comes to scientific or general investigation. Burden of proof is rarely associated with scientific inquiry. Scientific advancement has come about by a spirit of wonder and of questioning. I decided to study The God Delusion many years after my initial reading. There were many arguments I now saw in a completely different light. The first was the ultimate 74. Who designed the designer? The key for me to unlocking this is the nature of the cause of something that has always existed. It does not make sense to ask what caused God, as God is eternal. That's the same logic one would apply to an eternal universe. It is not simply one step backward, as Dawkins suggests. This might seem convenient in the eyes of an atheist, but Christianity has always claimed that God is eternal. Psalm 92, "Before the mountains were brought forth, or you had ever formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God." Who designed the designer turns out to be a nonsensical question applied to an eternal designer. I concluded that postulating God is one step further back in a regression. That's incorrect. The set of rules or laws that evolves is not what is right and wrong, but what is helpful for the time being. On RNA and DNA, a set of instructions is such a good analogy for DNA that it is perhaps more accurate to say that it is a definition. Even the simplest of life forms contain a quantity of coded information that is hard to comprehend. Dawkins admits that chance alone could not explain this digital information. The age of the universe does not give enough time for that process to be random. John Lennox, in his book God's Undertaker, helps me to see the flaw in Dawkins' reasoning. The analogy frequently used is that of randomly selecting letters, often pictures as monkeys hitting keys on a typewriter. Ending up with a work of Shakespeare by randomly hitting the keys is very unlikely, to say the least. It is analogous to climbing Mount Improbable on the vertical face. Dawkins breaks this problem into small chunks. A monkey may well get the first letter correct, analogous to a small step up the slope of Mount Improbable. That's where the theory falls through. Dawkins attempts to then lock the correct letter in. Having gotten the first letter correct, the monkey can move on to having a go at the next. But this is not a valid step without invoking intelligence. To lock in the first letter, it must be declared correct, and that can only happen by comparing it to a right answer. Having the right answer is to have the intelligence Dawkins is seeking to deny. Without locking in that first step, next random step is just as likely to take you back down the mountain as it is up. Disagreeing with an atheist does not make one a Christian. It doesn't even make one not an atheist, so what's next? I decided to investigate Christianity for myself. I Googled churches close by, and I visited one. It was advertising an alpha course for people who want to find out more about Christianity. I arrogantly thought I'd be more educated than everyone else there. Other guests had asked questions of the Christian faith, many I had not considered. The answers given by the leaders were not only credible, but very convincing. A tipping of the scales was happening. Dawkins' atheism was losing explanatory power. The Christian faith was gaining it. I now understood that word, faith, in a very different way. It would previously have made me roll my eyes in disdain, but faith did not mean the blind faith that Richard Dawkins pours scorn on. This new faith did not require normally rational people to ignore the evidence. I found the Bible to be more coherent than I ever imagined. The Bible is a collection of books authored by different people at different times, and yet it has threads woven through it that are hard to explain without a single inspiration. I have found the Bible to be beautifully curated. Some of the passages have a deeply rich architecture. I have found the Bible to be more relevant than I ever thought. It describes a humanity that can be simultaneously good and broken. Humanity demonstrates traits of kindness, creativity, generosity, and love, and yet that humanity is flawed. It demonstrates selfishness, greed, envy, a dangerous disregard for our environment. Self-centeredness is proven true time and time again. These are timeless truths evidenced by what we see around and within ourselves. The Bible teaches that putting your faith in Jesus is the start of a new life. In those who follow Jesus, God grows the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. This has been my experience. Excerpts are from Coming to Faith through Dawkins. 12 essays on the pathways from New Atheism to Christianity by former atheist and Oxford professor Alister McGrath and Denis Alexander. Indeed, I have found that has been my experience as well. Coming to faith, I can see all the ways in which I have radically changed as a person, as a new creation in Christ. When I was an atheist, I might have given $10 over 5 years to the homeless. Now, that is in the many thousands each year. Whenever I was an atheist, I sought to please myself. I made myself my God. If you are new here, this is, I think, about the 15th video in our Atheist Convert to Christianity series. And the quotes from these passages were by an engineer by the name of Nick Berryman. There are another 11 essays in Coming to Faith through Dawkins. I'd recommend checking out John Lennox's books here as well. I recommend reading. I think reading is a really good thing for the mind, and I think we're too glued to our screens and we're not glued enough to books. And I think perhaps if humanity became more glued to books than our screens, we may find ourselves living in a better world. Christ is King. Every knee will bow. Absolutely.